Hi, my name is Bente, I'm the Norse Witch, and today we are going to talk about books. Long time, no book video. I know I used to make much more book review videos and book hauls and everything like that, but to be honest, I haven't really felt like it. It's not like I haven't bought books or anything, but this is not a haul. My aim this year is I want to stay realistic, not that I don't want to buy any new books, because that will not happen. You know me, I will always buy books. I want to stay realistic. I will not stop buying books, especially fiction books, but when it comes to my witchcraft, anthropology, archaeology, history books, I want to work through a lot more books than I'm buying. I want to try. So this video is about the books that I want to read in 2025. These are my plans. When I say read these books, yes, of course I will be reading them, but the thing is, you will see that all of these books are a little bit more heavier topics. They are history books, archaeology books, anthropology books, things like that. I don't really read a lot of like typical Witchcraft 101 books anymore. They don't really give me anything new most of the time. So I'm mostly focusing on other kinds of books, and these are not easy to get through, let me tell you. You will see what I mean in a minute. Let's go. Alright, so the first book that we have is already quite the big chonker, and this is this one, Svardkonstböcker by Dr. Thomas K. Johnson. This is simply a huge collection of Trolldom goodness, and I don't know why I always pronounce it Trolldom. It's Trolldom, but well, who cares? Yeah, this is a whole compilation of Scandinavian folklore, Scandinavian folk magic, different kinds of spells, and this is around 700 pages of spells. This is a compendium, so this is something that I really have to work through. I usually like to go through books like these and then just note any like similarities between spells and things like that. Different kinds of plants that are used in a similar manner or for similar things, and then I will write that down. If I find out that work with graveyard spirits is usually done for the same purposes, then I will write that down. So yeah, this is what I want to do with this huge book. This will take me ages, because it's not just reading it and then I'm done, it's actually working through it. And this will be the theme of this video, because none of these books are books that I'm just going to read and then I'm done with it. The next one is History of, I don't know how to pronounce it in English. I will pronounce it as I know it in Latin. History of Genii and Familiar Spirits by John Beaumont. This one. By the way, the Svardkonstböcker did not have a blurb, so I couldn't read you anything. Here, I can read you a tiny little blurb. History of Genii and Familiar Spirits, first published in 1705, presents a history of communication with the personal, genius and familiar spirits that draws on sources as diverse as Neoplatonism, Renaissance, occultism, Greco-Roman history and cross-cultural comparisons with the Sami people and Native Americans. Beaumont presents examples of contact with spirits through visions, dreams, apparitions and magic, stretching from Socrates to his own day. John Beaumont, 1650 to 1731, was a physician, antiquarian, mystic, geologist and fellow of the Royal Society. So this originally has been quite the old book, and I kind of feel like there could be a lot of valuable knowledge in this. Of course, with old books like these, you have to be very careful, because a lot of things that are sold to you as fact in books like these have been disproven ages ago. People were living in different times, they had different views on things. So this will not be like your today's age Witchcraft 101 book or anything like that. There will probably be a lot of cultural insensitivity and probably a lot of misogyny, we will see. But a book from 1705, you have to be careful with that. But I still think we can learn a lot of things from older books like this. I don't know if I will read this book and I will be like, wow, this is trash. I would have been better off just reading more modern anthropology books on this topic, but we will see. Okay, next up is probably the only book, or the book that comes closest to a Witchcraft 101 book from all of these books that I have prepared for you today. And that is Icelandic Folk Magic, Witchcraft of the North by Albert Bjorn. I already started reading this book when I went to Iceland because I was like, well, this is the perfect companion for an Iceland trip. I quickly realized I had zero time to go through it, so I read on the plane there, and when I arrived I read a little bit, but I simply did not have any energy to be reading a book. So afterwards I kind of forgot about it and started reading other books. I got 90 pages in and I really want to get through this. I'm excited about this. I love Albert in general, but yeah, I also love his books a lot. So this one will be interesting. It's about 300 pages and I'm very excited about it. In Iceland, trolls walk the mountains, long dead linger in their burial mounds, and elves suffer no fools. Icelandic Folk Magic, Witchcraft of the North presents the myth and lore behind these ancient folk magical practices, drawing from local oral histories, medieval sagas, law books, grimoires, and other sources never before translated to English. That's the thing I love about Albert. He actually takes Icelandic sources and translates them to English, sources that we have not had access before because we are not Icelandic speakers. Then put your knowledge into use with an extensive grimoire full of Icelandic staves, spells, charms, and correspondences. Albert Bjorn returns as our masterful and friendly guide through the contemporary landscape and practices of modern Icelandic witches and the traditions that inspire them. Take an árgangur and discover the spirits of your local area on a cold winter night. Drum up the spirits of the wood, burn offerings for the draconic spirits of volcanic lava fields, and learn to call on the old gods and the new in harmony. Okay, next up we have 3 books by Claude Lecouteux, whom I already heavily drew on with the Wild Hunt video when I did my research on the Wild Hunt, because he has done extensive research on it, and his book, I think it's called Phantom Armies, wait, I have it right here. Phantom Armies of the Night, The Wild Hunt and the Ghostly Processions of the Undead. It's a classic when it comes to the Wild Hunt, so if anyone is interested in that, then read that book. And when I was looking for resources on the Wild Hunt, I stumbled upon his book, and then I stumbled upon all of his other great books, and then I realized that another one of his books had already been on my to-be-read list, so I went on a whole shopping spree. First off, we have here The Return of the Dead, Ghosts, Ancestors, and the Transparent Veil of the Pagan Mind, again by Claude Lecouteux. I am very excited about that. Revenant spirits and ancestors and in general lore about death and what happens after death and stuff. I think it's insanely interesting. So, the impermeable border the modern world sees existing between that of the living and the dead was not visible to our ancestors. The dead could, and did, cross back and forth at will. The pagan mind had no fear of death, but some of the dead were definitely to be dreaded. Those who failed to go peacefully into the afterlife and remained on this side in order to right a wrong that had befallen them personally, or to ensure that the moral code promoted by their ancestors was being respected. These dead individuals were a far cry from the amorphous ectoplasm that is featured in modern ghost stories. These earlier visitors from beyond the grave, known as revenants, slept, ate, and fought just like the living, even when, like Klöfi of the Svarfdæla saga, they carried their heads in their arms. Revenants were part of the ancestor worship prevalent in the pagan world and still practiced in indigenous cultures such as the Fang and Kota of equatorial Africa, among others. The church, eager to supplant this familial faith with its own, engineered the transformation of the corporeal revenant into the disembodied ghost of modern times, which could then be easily discounted as a figment of the imagination or the work of the devil. The sanctified grounds of the church cemetery replaced the burial mounds on the family farm, where the ancestors remained as an integral part of the living community. This exile to the formal graveyard, ironically enough, has contributed to the great loss of the sacred that characterizes the modern world. This one will be good. I already really loved, what's her name? Hilda Ellis Davidson, I think. Her book, The Road to Hell. That's an entire book simply just about life after death and in general the view of death and burial and anything like that in pre-Christian Scandinavia. Insanely interesting, so I'm very, very excited to read this. Then we have another one that had previously already been recommended to me, and that is, again by Claude Lecouteux, The Tradition of Household Spirits, Ancestral Lore and Practices. So, sorry, for anyone interested in household spirits, this one is being recommended a lot. Again, we have a very long blurb. Why do we hang horseshoes for good luck or place wreaths on our doors? Why does the groom carry his new bride over the threshold? These customs represent the last vestiges from a long, rich history of honoring the spirits of our homes. They show that a house is more than a building. It is a living being with a body and soul. Examining the extensive traditions surrounding houses from medieval times to the present, Claude Lecouteux reveals that before we entered the current era of frequent moves and modular housing, moving largely from the countryside into cities, humanity had an extremely sacred relationship with their homes and all the spirits who lived there alongside them. From the spirit of the house itself to the mischievous elves, fairies and imps who visited, invited or not. He shows how every aspect of constructing and keeping a house involved rites, ceremony, customs and taboos to appease the spirits, including the choice of a building lot and the very materials with which it was built. Uncovering the lost meaning behind door and window placement, the hearth and the threshold, Lecouteux shares many tales of house spirits, from the offerings used to cajole the local land spirit into becoming the domestic house spirit to the good and bad luck bestowed upon those who seek the help of the little money man. He draws on studies and classic literature from old Europe, from Celtic lands and Scandinavia to France and Germany to the far eastern borders of Europe and into Russia, to explain the pagan roots behind many of these traditions. Revealing our ancestors' charms, prayers, and practices to bestow happiness and prosperity upon their homes, Lecouteux shows that we can invite the spirits back into our houses, old or new, and restore the sacred bond between home and inhabitant. So, since I'm not going to buy a house, I just bought a house. And we're probably going to move in April and doing a lot of renovations all throughout March. I should probably read this first, but honestly, I think when it comes to household spirits in northern Germany, I'm pretty well set up at this point. By the way, if you're interested, I have a video on that, so I will link it. But yeah, very excited to finally be reading this after it has been recommended to me quite a lot. And then lastly, we have, again by Claude Lecouteux, The Hidden History of Elves and Dwarves. This one. I think my cats are fighting. If you hear loud screaming or rumbling noises, then it's because two of my cats are play fighting. Yeah, elves and dwarves. Elves and dwarves have been so interesting to me, but honestly I kind of feel like I still have not 100% grasped the elves and dwarves. Maybe it is because I kind of feel like elves in northern Germany, while they do exist, they feel like they are quite rare around here. So I really hope that this will help me out a little bit. Most people are familiar with the popular image of elves as Santa's helpers and dwarves as little bearded men wearing red caps, who are mischievous and playful, helpful and sly, industrious and dexterous. But their roots go far deeper than their appearance in fairy tales and popular stories. Elves and dwarves are survivors of a much older belief system that predates Christianity and was widespread throughout Western Europe. Sharing his extensive analysis of Germanic and Norse legends, as well as Roman, Celtic and medieval literature, Claude Lecouteux explores the ancient, intertwined history of dwarves and elves. He reveals how both were once people who lived in wild regions as keepers of the secrets of nature. They were able to change their size at will and had superhuman strength and healing powers. They were excellent smiths, crafting swords that nothing could dull, as well as magical jewelry, and often entered into the service of lords or heroes. They were a part of the everyday life of our ancestors before they were transformed by fairy tales and church texts into the mythical creatures we know today. Lecouteux shows how in earlier folklore, elves and dwarves were interchangeable, gradually evolving over time to express very different kinds of beings. Dwarf, giant, and even elf did not necessarily connote size, but referred to races with different skills. Elves were more ethereal, offering protection and kindness, while dwarves reflected a more corporeal form of spirit, often appearing as messengers from the underworld. Yet dwarves and elves could be bargained with, and our ancestors would leave a broken object outside the door at night with the hope that a dwarf or elf or other local spirit would repair it. Revealing the true roots of these helpful and powerful beings, including an in-depth exploration of one of the most famous dwarf, elf, fairy beings of the Middle Ages, Oberon, also known as Alberich, Le Couteau shows how the magic of dwarves and elves can be rekindled if we recognize their signs and invite them back into our world. So, dwarves and elves all throughout Europe. He seems to be very good at explaining how the folklore behind specific beings or concepts works in different areas in Europe and then kind of bringing them together. Of course, I kind of pick and choose, and I usually pick like the German and Scandinavian aspects of it, and then I'll leave out the rest. But it's still always interesting to learn about these concepts or these beings in other areas of Europe, because honestly, I'm quite pigeonholed into German and Scandinavian, and everything else I simply don't really know anything about. So being able to learn a little bit about other areas of Europe is quite nice from time to time. Okay, next up, after a lot of stuff about spirits, we have a book on plants, and this is Flowers of Blood by, and I will probably butcher that name, Sarah Bonadia George. This one, look at how fancy it is. I'm very, very happy that Ella Harrison told me about this book, because I didn't know about it, because it's by a very, very small publisher, Hexen Press. I was very excited because apart from Icelandic Folk Magic by Albert, there usually aren't really books that go into plant folklore and the use of plants in folk medicine, for example. Specifically about Scandinavia, there are a lot about other areas and things like Scott Cunningham's Encyclopedia of Magical Herbs that simply go into every single fucking plant and don't even say which folklore the lore is coming from. And I don't like that. So I was very excited when I figured out that there is now a book on Swedish plant lore. Very excited about that. Again, this will be one that I will be working through. Luckily it's not that long. Wait, let me see. Not even 200 pages. So this one will probably be quite quick, and I'm expecting to already know quite a lot of it, simply because I have been taking the Trolldom course by Johannes Björn Goldbeck, who is Swedish. So a lot of the stuff that I have been learning about was Swedish. So I'm expecting to know quite a lot already, but I am also quite sure that there will be some gems in here that I did not know about beforehand, and I'm excited about it. And I'm also excited about being able to finally, hopefully, recommend a book about Scandinavian plant lore. So this will be very, very exciting, especially also because, well, with a new house and a big garden, I will have to figure out what I want to plant. So we will see if that will help me with it. By the way, this does not have a blurb. It's a book about plant lore. So then we have two books about folklore. The first of the two is Scandinavian Folklore by Alexander Gardner and William A. Craigie? Is that the name? I don't know. Illustrations of the traditional beliefs of the northern peoples. This one. This one also does not have a blurb, and it really doesn't need a blurb. It's simply story after story after story. So this is just a collection of different kinds of Scandinavian folklore. And again, this is one where I have to go through it and then see if there's like similarities between different stories. So yeah, again, a book to really, really work through. I already worked through a very similar collection of Scandinavian folklore, so I hope that maybe there will be some stories in this one that I have not read about yet. Because, well, it would be kind of sad to have basically two books containing exactly the same stories. That would be sad, but yeah, it's a collection of folklore. I have a lot of these that I constantly have to work through. I still also have a lot of German ones that I have to go through, but it's simply so much. It's so much. But a lot of times they don't really contain an index or anything like that. So it's not like when I'm looking for, let's say, a specific spirit, I can just look into an index and see all of the stories that contain that spirit. A lot of the collections sadly don't work like that. So if I want to really get like the best out of these collections, I have to actually work through them. And then next up, I already said, the second one is also a folklore book, but this one is not necessarily a folklore collection. This is actually just like text and more text and more text. So this is not a folklore collection, the other one was. This one is Old Norse Folklore, Tradition, Innovation and Performance in Medieval Scandinavia by Stephen A. Mitchell. This one. The medieval northern world consisted of a vast and culturally diverse region, both geographically from roughly Greenland to Novgorod, and culturally as one of the last areas of Europe to be converted to Christianity. Old Norse folklore explores the complexities of this fascinating world in case studies and theoretical essays that connect orality and performance theory to memory studies and myths relating to pre-Christian Nordic religion, to innovations with late medieval pilgrimage song culture. Old Norse folklore provides critical new perspectives on the Old Norse world, some of which appear in this volume for the first time in English. Always love that. Stephen A. Mitchell presents emerging methodologies to offer a better understanding of Old Norse materials. He examines, interprets and reinterprets the medieval data bequeathed to us by posterity, myths, legends, riddles, charms, court culture, conversion narratives, landscapes and mindscapes, targeting largely overlooked yet important sources of cultural insights. I am very excited about it. I think it is quite new. Let me see. Yes, it came out in 2023. So this one is a more modern one. Most of the other books that I already talked about are older. So this one is quite new, quite modern. So I'm excited about that. Because let's be honest, most of the books I am currently reading are quite old. Unlike the last book, A Hackenschonker. This one is also new. I think it came out also in 2023 or even 2024. No, 2023. And this one is The Norse Sorceress, Mind and Materiality in the Viking World, edited by, I will butcher that name, I don't know how to pronounce that, Leszek Gardila, I don't know, Sophie Bonding, I don't know, and Peter Pence. So, that is this one. A Hackenschonker, if you know The Viking Way by Neil Price. This is a similar size, huge, simply huge, and it's just text and more text and more text. It took me ages to go through The Viking Way, and it will be the same with this one. But this is insanely cool because if I'm correct, this kind of goes with the exhibition that is currently going on in the National Museum of Denmark in Copenhagen. They currently have a vulva exhibition going on, which I really have to go to. If I miss it, I will be so sad, but with all of the house stuff going on, it's hard to travel. But yeah, I think this kind of goes with it. If I am correct, and I'm excited about it. Very long blurb, get ready. Old Norse literature abounds with descriptions of magic acts that allow ritual specialists of various kinds to manipulate the world around them, see into the future or the distant past, change weather conditions, influence the outcomes of battles, and more. While magic practitioners are known under a myriad of terms, the most iconic of them is the vulva. As the central figure of the famous mythological poem Völuspá, the prophecy of the vulva commands both respect and fear. In non-mythological texts, similar women are portrayed as crucial, albeit somewhat peculiar members of society. Always veiled in mystery, the Volur and their kind have captured the academic and popular imaginations for centuries. Bringing together scholars from various disciplinary backgrounds, this volume aims to provide new insights into the reality of magic and its agents in the Viking world, beyond the pages of medieval texts. It explores new trajectories for the study of past mentalities, beliefs, and rituals, as well as the tools employed in these practices and the individuals who wielded them. In doing so, the volume engages with several topical issues of Viking Age research, including the complex entanglements of mind and materiality, the cultural attitudes to animals and the natural world, and the cultural constructions of gender and sexuality. By addressing these complex themes, it offers a nuanced image of the vulva and related magic workers in their cultural context. The volume is intended for a broad, diverse and international audience, including experts in the field of Viking and Old Norse studies, but also various non-professional history enthusiasts. The Norse sorceress-minded materiality in the Viking world is a key output of the project Thoughts Behind Things, conducted at the National Museum of Denmark from 2020 to 2023 and funded by some foundation that I cannot pronounce. So, I was correct that this was basically done by the National Museum of Denmark, which I am a huge fan of. Every single time I'm in Copenhagen, I go there because I love it so much, especially when they have Viking Age exhibitions. So yeah, this one will probably take me multiple months to go through. In an effort not to go insane, I will probably read this one alongside other books because I cannot. I mean, you heard it. This one is also, it's not just meant for non-academics, but also scholars and academics. So it will be heavy to go through. But I'm excited. I'm very, very excited about that. And with that being said, those are the books that I want to work through in 2025. Feel free to tell me which books you are planning to read in 2025 down below in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this video. Maybe you will also be interested in some of these books. If you want any reviews on any of these books, then also tell me in the comments, I guess. Feel free to check out my other socials, and in case you want to support my channel, then check out my Patreon or my YouTube membership. And I will see you in another video. Bye!